He's always shooting
well,
off early, isn't he?
He is.
Always fine off. It's 3
And he
minutes
never
early. We
gives
might
us
as
a
well
script.
start. We're all here. Well, the main reason I wanted to do it is because I wanted to try and, because you're all making each other moderators and things. I want to work out how on earth to do it. We've not gone live on YouTube, and yet I am looking at it.
Will anyone notice?
No, will anyone notice? Yeah, that's
Where's
Is there a
the
viewer
script?
awake?
No, there we are.
Where's my script? I meant to get my script. I never get a script in time either.
No, he always sends it late, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah,
It's
it's always
script.
after the show.
Yeah.
You ever notice?
My
it's
teleprompter's
after-
broken. I have to ad lib sometimes.
I'm astounded. I'm looking at the YouTube feed. We're about a minute behind on YouTube.
Have you done playback speed 2 times on YouTube? No, you do that. You catch up.
I'm gonna abandon that idea. I wanted to make people moderators or whatever it is with the spanner thing in this, and you do that from YouTube. I can't do that with StreamYard and this going. Evening, Dan. How are you?
But who amongst us is moderate?
None of us.
None of us. No, we're all extremists.
And I'd love to make you moderate and to abuse the abusers. Well, where to start? Let's, because I've started early. Let's do the the now inevitable DJI bit a little bit early, and get it out of the way before we really start. So they've given up with that one make of manufacturers. They're doing their own thing, and with the FPV
there's been quite a lot this week because we've just had the leaked images of the new goggles, which most of us have had for a week. I've had them for about 4 days, but we were all asked not to share it because it would have incriminated the person they sort of came from in a public situation. So there was, I think there's probably, this has been like the worst kept secret there's been, but the images were roaming around in the background, but someone's now got permission to publish it. I just gave up. I just couldn't be bothered to ask. I was like, thanks, I've seen it. There you go. It's a picture of the new goggles. We know a lot more about it now, but yeah, the Cadex thing is just a bit like you go into competition with the company that's supplying you the parts for the best selling product you've ever had, and then you get a bit surprised when they stop supplying you.
Yeah.
So it was inevitable. But what is interesting in it actually is it's the first time they've openly admitted it's Cadex. If you actually read the statement, it's the first time they've sort of said, oh yeah, it is us. It's not some random company. They knew. They are, I think, playing the victim a little bit here, even in the statement that the big bad DJI will no longer supply them because they've gone into competition. You know, what did anyone think was going to happen? I think what it shows actually is a disjointed, surely, because the one comment they have made is, oh, I've heard is they had a load of cameras and they put a big order in so they'd have all the ear units to go with the cameras. Surely someone would have gone, the second we launch this, we're going to really annoy them. Let's get that order in and delivered before we launch this. So at least we're not going to be left high and dry like they are now. So it does seem a little bit disjointed. It's answered 2 things. Number one, we always knew Cadex didn't make the ear unit. Now we know 100% Cadex never made the ear unit. It doesn't really change anything. Runcam is still supplying. Cadex got supply. I think they said to me they've got camera supply for well over 12 months at current sales levels, and they've got ear unit supply for a few months, and that's at current sales levels. And Runcam are keeping supplying. So really, from a user point of view, all that will really change is one of the companies who was selling it will no longer sell it. That's it. Nothing's really changed, you know. Supply is still plentiful.
Now I saw I've seen a couple of videos of the other system. Right, that's enough about DJI. The other system with the blurring in the pictures.
Yeah, this one.
And that seems, I see other people have had the same problem. So that is plainly a problem.
Yeah, it's definitely a problem, but I also have to say I have actually seen it at its best now, which I'd never seen before, you know. So whereas, you know, I released a video completely contrasting JB, who said he's had a great experience, mine was terrible. I'd still never seen what he'd seen, whereas now I have actually seen it for one battery. I don't know how I got it to do it, but genuinely, I changed the setting, I flew, and the second I took off, and all I was doing in those fields is literally, I'm forcing it to do what I know it will do. Not forcing it, I'm just flying around at very low level over grass. There's no point me sending it high. There's no point doing anything. That's where it does it. And literally, I got like within a second of the flight, and my brain instantly went, something's different. And then so I proceeded into the flight. I was like, this is fantastic. And then I changed the battery, and it went straight back to as it was. So I don't know what to make of it. I did some very mild testing in that field to see if I could replicate it, and I couldn't. I could spend a day flying through 30 or 40 packs and maybe come up with a solution. Frankly, it's not my job. If they want to pay me to do it, I might do it, but I'm not their beta tester. I'm going to, I've done that in the past, and I've done it for DJI and others, and I wasn't paid to do it, but I also wasn't really reviewing a product back then. If I find the bug, I'll feed it to them. I'll help them. But what I'm not really inclined to do is go and spend a day of my time trying to fault find their system when it's this bad. That's where I'm at with it now.
It's interesting because it's still that balance between latency, lack of stuttering, and visual quality. I wonder if it flip-flop backwards between those two. If you're flying close, you wouldn't have noticed the stuttering or the latency. But I wonder if you'd gone out to any significant distance, that would have gone to that stuttering mode because it was favoring bandwidth over latency.
What I don't know, Bruce, is what changed on that one flight. Something, and
the battery.
It's the battery, but it was fundamentally different. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and the annoyance was I changed the settings from normal bitrate to high bitrate with the new camera, and it was the first flight doing that. And I instantly thought, oh my god, we found it. It was the camera in high bitrate mode. That's why everyone else is having great performance. And if every other flight had been like that, I'd have been actually happy to say, look, we're starting to see a pattern here. But the strange thing is, did one flight come down and thought, right, let's try it again, and it was like straight back to part one.
You might want to toggle back to 25 and then back to 50 again and see if it happens only on the first.
I did do that there. Yeah. I re-replicated there what I did the first time, and I couldn't do it. What I haven't done, though, is gone through because what I did was very simple. I powered up in 25 megabits on a random channel, changed it to 50, which boots you back to channel 8. So I changed to 50, then went back and changed to channel 1, and then took off. And I tried replicating that again, and I couldn't get it to do it. But there might be some mileage in me trying it. But if I get time, that's the thing. It's got huge potential. When it is working well, there's a lot of people who don't like CADX, and there's a lot of good reasons not to like CADX, but they are an FPV company. And if you're going to have a choice between the devil and the deep blue sea, at least if one of them is in your industry, you might be better. If CADX can get this to work, I'm not saying they're a perfect company. I'm not saying they haven't been rather loose with the truth in the past, but they are taking feedback. They are listening. And the reality is they have listened. They've already said they're bringing a work board. DJI won't even answer the community. They've already said they've confirmed, Bruce, they're doing a module. That's now happening. That's definitely happening. And they want to work on other stuff. So they've added canvas mode. They've added all of this stuff. So they are listening. Whereas, we're 3 years down the line with DJI, and it took me putting a video out saying don't buy before they fixed a bug that bricked the goggles. So as good as DJI is, they will have a new product coming. It will be very good, but let's not pretend they are anyone's friend in FPV, because they're not,
Yeah, it's an interesting time, isn't it? It's quite interesting that the Red Cat people put out their little thing that's done a bit of video in a volcano, etc., etc.
Yeah.
They seem to be clutching at straws all over the place. And I heard today that Teal have a year's worth of production in the bag, and my return to that was, well, that's probably a day to DJI, whatever that year's
Yeah.
worth of production is. It's all very well. I wonder if they could produce more than 100 a day or whatever, or not even that. So
Yeah.
that whole a Red Cat thing seems very interesting to me.
Well, the Red Cat thing is because, look, they're not this system. They the belief is Fat Shark are manufacturing the goggle. That's what we've been told, and then Walksnail are doing the rest. But it's not a Fat Shark system. It's not a Red Cat system. They're basically an OEM. Is the right term to use. So
yes.
it is interesting, and I think FPV is an interesting one for DJI. DJI have always come in and taken over industries. The thing they'll struggle with in FPV is there's still a strong belief in FPV of wanting companies who work with the community. There's such a strong community around FPV, whether it be open source, Express LRS, and that side of things. I think DJI might be surprised how quick people will jump if there's an alternative. And that hasn't happened in the consumer drone space. There are
Okay.
great alternatives, but let's be honest, you're gonna buy the DJI. Whereas I do think if someone can bring it to the table, and this could be it, I think a lot of people will go, yeah, I don't want to be involved in that. And I don't know what Bruce thinks. Bruce, do you think they'll always,
There'll always be room for competitions. The thing that concerns me most about Caddx is that, in my experience, their quality control is crap. And they could derail themselves by sending out a lot of stuff that breaks easy, and that seems to be, a lot of people have had dead on arrivals. A lot of people have had stuff that breaks after you plug it in. They really need to lift their game. I've had so many cameras from Caddx that didn't work, or the little things like the little locking ring on the lens was broken, so you couldn't lock the lens and it wouldn't stay focused. There's little things like that. They don't seem to pay quite as much attention as other manufacturers, which could be their downfall, because if you're spending that sort of money, you don't want something that's a bit of a gamble, roll of the dice.
And sawdust. People have told me there was a period where people were getting dust in the cameras and all sorts. So yeah, they do, as you say, they've got a lot to do. And look, I tell you something that surprised me this week. I found it really interesting. I had a message on Facebook with one of the guys who makes a lot of cine drones for the cinema industry, and not big stuff, but FPV stuff. And every aircraft they make is based off DJI Digital FPV. And I do wonder if this whole new system is more aimed at getting DJI into that market more. They don't really care about the DIY FPV. This is about DJI technology being used on set. If you look at that film that was released a couple of months ago, where Alex Vanover flew a lot of the shots on it.
Have you seen that new Netflix The Grey Man?
Yeah.
Have you seen that? So much drone shoots in that. FPV drone shots. It's really good.
But DJI is seeing their name now, or they're seeing their gear being used in this stuff. And I think to them, that's far more interesting than a couple of hobby pilots in a field in the middle of nowhere. I think they're probably now looking at how can we become the de facto standard in cine FPV. And that's what I think they're aiming at.
It probably wouldn't be too hard for them, because I'd imagine they're on quite a few lists for the bigger stuff and the other stuff. So they're already on the way in. And do we see the beta flight shots of, I've forgotten the thing of the guy targeting in Ukraine straight through a door that we're kicking about today? And that's caused a bit of a stir in the Switchblade larger military fraternity. How could that thing be as good as our machine, etc., etc., etc.? Well, it still went through the door, didn't it? And it cost next to no money. So
and some of these kids could fly it through the keel, and that's the I think what they're not anticipating is the skill of some of these pilots. That's the bit. We've got I got a young lad who's on my Discord server, and Failsafe FPV, and he is incredible. When you look at him on the sticks, he is, he's just getting faster, and he's way faster than I could ever fly. And he's hitting holes that these military are sitting there thinking, we got all this automated stuff. They don't need automated. They'll just fly it through there. Don't worry about that.
Mm,
You know.
mm. It's yeah, things are changing, and they're changing fast. And they said low cost, but even the lad, I can't remember the brands because I don't follow all this thing. But it was all, I recognize the brands over the goggles and over this and over that. They're saying specially modified. It's like, oh, what, with a coat of paint? Because
Yeah,
that was
look,
about it.
well, let's look. You
It's-
can buy an off-the-shelf, ready-to-fly quad that's fairly good for like $300 to $400.
that's
You
exactly
could
hello there,
strap
Sean.
some decent explosive to that and fly it in through the gap in the window and drop it in place.
Well, there goes the hobby, doesn't it? The more reasons
Yeah.
to crimp down.
But
It does.
yeah,
Well, we'll get to those reasons about. And Sean, I meant to email Sean and say, well done on his wing statement last week, and we must talk about that some more. So while he's here, I'll remember to say that. But so we're going to see. Are we going to see a little bit, as Bruce has just alluded to? We're going to see a regulatory. Oh my God, we didn't know about that, and that's going to be what? So most of those things are less than a kilo, are they? Kilo and a half?
God, yes, well under a kilo.
Yeah. So are we moving down? We're not moving down into 250 territory, though, are we? Or 240?
No, you're normally 300 to 400, depending. You can get into
But
the
there's no
200.
reason why you can't go down below 250 with a personal, enough explosive to take somebody out. The technology is there to do it.
Did you see the Andy RC video where he did the off the line speed? And it was 0 to 60 in, what was it? Was it less than a second?
I think it was less than a second, yeah.
I think it was 0.7 of a second off the line
Well,
to 60 miles an hour.
But even if they're moving at half speed compared to a standard commercial stuff that's out there, or even standard military stuff that's out there, it's still moving a lot faster. So counter UAS systems are going to struggle. And if it's staying low level down in the weeds, because these FPV goggles local to it, again, they're going to struggle to.
You can't even see it, and you can't shoot it down. It is,
Yeah.
It's going to come in at 70 miles an hour from a mile away at high speed. 70 miles an hour high speed from a mile away. You're not going to know what's hit you. Bang. Gone.
And then the operator isn't transmitting his position in any way or form, unlike standard COTS stuff from DJI and Autel and the others. So I mean, there's a whole host of pluses for it, really, isn't there? Though I suppose the negative is you've got to be relatively close, I suppose.
It's a bit like sniping, though, isn't it? I mean, it's the same as a sniper.
True.
You've got to have a good skill set, and you can take people out from a long way away. So in that respect, it's not a massive dramatic change. Although you can get people to take cover is the only thing.
It's just you can fly it through into the building, isn't it?
Counter UAS will see a fast-moving object. The kicker will be if you're low down and dirty, you can go under a radar, same as with planes. So a radar you can go under it. The RF will struggle, though, because the signal will start bouncing off all the wet grass and everything, or trees or bushes. All you need is a damp environment, and the RF will be bouncing like wano. So you've just got to pick your time. If you need got counter UAS, you just got to pick your time. There's only one sensor that'll see you coming really well and be able to track you all the way in. There's only one that I've seen that can do that. And that's the audible ones.
Yeah, pardon? What did he say? Pardon?
To be totally honest, though, audible, I mean, look at how these mortars and these computer-controlled artillery work now. They can land within a few centimeters of their target from a long way away, and it doesn't matter you're behind cover; it just blows everything up. So, really, are these drones that much of a fantastic thing? Just get yourself a decent howitzer or a decent mortar, and you can do the same thing from a lot.
True.
You're not, the shells are much cheaper than a drone.
True, but it'll be but the morale thing, if you're in the back of a building down a road and something comes through the door, that's got to hurt the morale of
but if you're dead, you're dead. If it's blown up the whole building, or if it's taken you out just one person, still it kind of defeats you as a soldier.
And what's the howitzer? Was it 20, 30 miles? Was it 30 odd miles that thing can shoot? Because the Russians can only do 25 or something. The howitzer's got another 5 on top of it, hasn't it? And like you say, it literally drops it within a meter of where you tell it to. I mean, that's bonkers.
Well, before we move on to the big topic, the only topic really for this week, I just want to mention Valancy, delivery drone company that have filed, and it's a wonderful, disingenuous way. I don't understand. Well, I don't understand anything, but give something a neat sounding acronym, and therefore it can't be so bad. So ABC in America is the Assignment for Benefit of Creditors, which Valancy filed last Friday. I can't remember the name of the date or the name of the date. I can't remember what it was, last Friday was, but it was last month, which of course down here, and I'm sure in most places of the world, was pay weekend. So if you were expecting your pay in Valancy, I've been told you didn't get it last weekend for last month, and they have shut the doors. And whilst nobody's been laid off, they weren't paid. But then Valancy have asked me that, or said that, well, no, some things are inaccurate in that. And I suspect what they think is inaccurate, we're the only people that have run the story today. They did file that last Friday, and it's a sort of a dodgy way of going bankrupt and protecting loads of people.
So did this 3D rendering computer break down or something? How could you go bankrupt?
Apparently they had lots and lots of, well, I heard they spent $170 million trying to get one particular software stack to work, and it just didn't work for them. So that's one of the things, because funny enough, when you do that and don't pay your engineers, they start emailing me. That's what sort of starts happening. And then also, what's Dan saying? The last mile's a massive VC pump and dump scheme might be start of the dump. Plenty of other publishers are not looking too hot on share price either. Yeah, Dan, I genuinely don't understand any of this stuff. and my lifestyle, Bruce did a good ranty video, and I seem to live a similar lifestyle to him, which is just enough money, and we're quite happy with it. And I have no time at all for learning about all this other nonsense, except that it always just dismays me when I see people taken for a ride and ripped off and whatever. I just can't believe it can happen. So they go, and I suspect the reason they're saying, "Hey, but what about the inaccuracies?" Is because in all these cases, I add Glassdoor comments, and there's always upset companies. So Valancy, you're very welcome. The young lady that reached out to me too, I did say we're going to be here doing this. You're very welcome to answer the questions that I asked you, and then we'll take it from there. So that's Valancy. Yeah, they seem to have a good product. They seem to have, but again, as Bruce suggests, maybe it was just all the renderings. But now from that, unless someone else knows different in the comments, let's jump to the elephant in the room that we've been talking about. For how many years have we been talking about remote ID? It's loads of years. And it's almost, what I was thinking about earlier today was almost like we shouldn't talk about it. We need to look at the next problem, because this one's done and dusted, isn't it? It's too late. It's too late to do anything about this. The effects of it are going to be huge. And Bruce has done a fantastic video about it. If you haven't seen it, don't go now. Whatever you do, don't go now, but go later to Bruce's channel and have a look at his assertion.
That's the RC Model Reviews channel, not the XJet channel.
The RC Model Reviews one. The assertions it'll have on the US reviewer marketplace, which is a small, there's a handful of people really, isn't it? Oh, bye, John. sorry, John. I got rid of him. And then also Ready to Fly. Do you want to summarize it, Bruce? What you think?
Yeah, basically, within 6 weeks' time, all products manufactured after that date have to have standard remote ID fitted. And people are thinking, oh yeah, Mavics and so forth. But no, it's also the foamies, the fixed wing models that you're going to be buying where all you have to do is just bind them to your transmitter or add a receiver and bind them. Those things also require standard remote ID if they're manufactured after the 16th of September 2022. So the thing is that with the standard RC system, you cannot implement standard remote control or standard remote ID, because standard remote ID requires that the operator's location is broadcast, and our transmitters do not have a GPS in them. And none of the standard protocols such as Crossfire or ACCST or even ELRS have the ability to send GPS data to the model, even if we had a GPS source. So they can't sell bind and flies and plug and plays and all that sort of stuff, because they'll be in breach of the remote ID rule. I don't think anyone's thought about this. The AMA are saying, oh, it's all right, we've got freers and we've got this and it won't affect us. But yes, even their members will not be able to buy these ready to fly or almost ready to fly models, because if they're made after the 16th of September, they must have standard remote ID. It doesn't matter whether you need to use it or not. It must be a part of the product. So yeah, it's basically killed that whole marketplace in the USA. It will have killed it. And of course, as I say, with reviewers as well, anyone that's operating under Part 107 doesn't even have the home built exemption now. If they build a new craft after the 16th of September, they're going to have standard remote ID fitted to it, even if it's a home build, because it's not for recreational purposes. If you're doing it commercially, that the home build doesn't apply. So you have to register every craft, and every craft made after the 16th of September has to have standard remote ID fitted. It's just a nightmare. So freestylers that like Mr. Steele and all the others that put videos up of just them flying, they're flying under Part 107 because the FAA says if you're going to make money out of your videos, you've got to have a Part 107. So they can't even build new drones after this date without that onerous compliance burden. They've got to certify that it's all compliance with the regulations. And the killer thing is the FAA haven't even released the specifications yet. So people don't know what to do anyway. It's crazy. Actually, E0. Interesting. You say that's a good point, because I believe, and people have said to me, that maybe Horizon Hobby are going to make a lot of money out of this, because they're the only people that own enough of the ecosystem to say our new plug-and-fly models, our new ready-to-fly models come with a new transmitter, which has the GPS built in, and a new DSM protocol now sends the GPS data to the model. They could produce a compliant fixed-wing model and put it in the shelves, but they'd be the only people who could do it. So it's going to be like DJI is basically the only drone company out there. Horizon may be the only people who can actually legally sell new ready-to-fly plug-and-fly models, because they'll own enough of the ecosystem to ship all the necessary pieces, and they'll come with standard remote ID. But at what price?
Yeah, well, there was a story that came through our tip line on October 15th last year. I'll post it in here. This hasn't actually been resolved. The accuracy so this is speaking now to they haven't put a standard out. The accuracy that FAA are requiring for the GPS, and I did see in the wording of the ruling there's a fiddle about barometric and GPS altitude. That is mentioned a little bit. But they were trying to make Samsung and Apple change the GPSs in your phone or tablet to be more accurate, to go with what they pegged as the standard, without checking that your consumer devices could do it. And funny enough, Apple and Samsung said, well, I'll tell you what, you can do one. And that's so there's loads of holes in this.
GPS accuracy is actually not that brilliant. It's 3 meters typically out, roughly, and then if it's in the vertical, it's up to 20 meters out.
Yeah, the Z axis is what they want. But yeah, quite why do they want such accuracy in the Z axis for the person?
Because you may be a bad actor in a building somewhere with 20 floors. They want to know what floor you're on, basically, if they need to locate you.
The GPS will work through all the concrete floors. It'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, they've actually conceded that GPS accuracy will be sufficient now, because they realize barometric is just a waste of time, because you have air pressure changes and calibration issues. It's just, they just want stuff that cannot be delivered.
I mean, you could be flying legally at 120 meters, 400 feet, and it could quite happily show you're at 152 meters or 132, and it could just be a GPS error, and you could get a fine on that GPS error. That's going to be the problem, because there's no solid way to prove it's anything else other than, well, it's telling me this.
Yeah, well, Mitchell's got the solution. He's got the solution. RTK for all. Yeah. It's the time. It's the time. And Dan saying, why do criminals care about rules? But it's just a most ridiculous, because this isn't for safety. I don't mind fitting stuff if it has a genuine safety, good for all connotation. If something's invented for that, then I'd probably be okay with that. But this has no bearing on safety at all. It is, and it really has no bearing on tracking. And did you also see in the ruling that so it says, well, who the hell's going to be interested in taking all the data anyway? And a few pages down, it says, and there are several companies set up to receive all the data. So that, it's like, what? So no one's going to, don't worry about your privacy. No one's going to care. little bit further down. Oh, but we're already dealing with people who are going to set up sensor networks. Yeah, it's absolute madness. And the people that have been baying for it, saying that it's going to open up BV loss in the US, are companies like bloody Valency. That's the sort of people that have been baying for this sort of thing. And look,
Yeah,
they go bust.
The FAA's admitted this is not for electronic conspicuity. It's not for navigational purposes. It's just remote ID. So it makes no difference to BV loss. It makes no difference to UTM systems. And so, what is the rationale? What is the justification for this? Because remember, the FAA said you need to register. So there's some accountability for people using drones, and that will solve all our problems. Register and put your number on your drone. Everything will be sweet. Well, people did that. And now they're saying, well, that's not actually enough. We need to now have an electronic system. So the FAA don't have a clue what they're doing. Mind you, they've been directed by Congress, which is a group of politicians. So it's understandable that it's just a giant, mess.
You think, guys, surely, manned aviation will be able to use this remote ID to see all the drones in the air and take evasive action, surely.
You've only got to look at what's been happening with Lewis Rossman on the right to repair stuff about the kickback. Some of the legislators, people were being paid to go on and kick back. And when you hear about some of the things that people were saying that they were being paid to say when you were having these, what's the term they use, lobbyists, and they were saying, you'll take your laptop into an independent repair center. They were lobbying Congress on there saying, and you'll take it in and they'll sell all your data online. It's all the same things. It's all the same behavior.
Fear, uncertainty,
the US is just built upon it. Sadly, unfortunately, its whole political system is designed for the person who pays the most.
Well, with laptops, Hunter Biden, his laptop, went into a repair shop, didn't it? And then all that stuff's come out. You've got to be careful what you leave your computers.
Yeah, but at least he didn't fly drones. He wasn't that bad of a man.
This is true.
No, definitely not bad.
It's interesting, though, the levels of compliance with remote ID, from what I've seen and feedback from the community, they're going to be almost zero, because everyone knows that the FAA does not have feet on the ground to enforce this thing, and law enforcement have got better things to do, and most people are just going to fly under the radar. So it's just going to be, and a rule that isn't enforced is a worthless rule.
But it'll be, so here, I've said this many times before, if you come on holiday to South Africa and you're about 10 kilometers out of a small town and there's a tree, slow down in your hire car, because that's where the copper is that's going to trap you. And the reason the copper there is that's going to trap you is because our traffic police are funded separately to our normal NICU Mr. Robber police. And that's how they make their money. And if you end up in a situation where you can receive a minor fine, I don't know, $50 for not having it, the only piece of equipment that copper will need now to determine that is a cell phone, because it's going to be Wi-Fi. There will be an app, and so it would be a great way to rake in some money at the local.
They may even outsource it, like parking. They have the clampers and things. They outsource this, and they take a clip on the ticket. That could happen. It could be a lovely revenue generator. But the thing is, go to the nearest window, look outside. Do you see any drones? This whole thing's so overstated that the skies are not full. You have to really hunt to find someone flying a drone these days. So is it really going to, if someone outsources that, or anyone tries to make money out of it, I don't think they're going to make a lot of money, because there's just not a lot of people flying drones in public places.
But yes and no, because if you go to a pop festival or something like that, or a sports event, you'll probably find somebody. You probably will.
There might be one or two people, but is it worth spending a day there just for one or two?
Yes.
It's a basic economics. It's not like a road where you got cars going past all the time. Some of them are going to be speeding. That's worth spending money to earn money. But in the case of drones, this whole drones are coming, and lots of them. It's all this bullshit that we get from judges who should. How can you make a ruling on something when you don't even understand what you're doing? They're not qualified. The judge was not qualified to make a ruling. The judges were blinded by hysteria and hype and fear and uncertainty and doubt that's been fed to them. They haven't even researched it. It's an appalling, tragic miscarriage of justice.
Well, that one's happened. We've been banging on about this one for 3 or 4 years at least, whenever it started. I can't remember where it started.
I've been banging on since they started registration. That was the thin end of the damn wedge.
Yeah, it was. I know. You're not wrong there. But it was a similar sort of time when it started. So what's the next thing? The next gotcha in America? And I'm pretty sure I know which one of it
UTM.
is. And it's
pay to fly. UTM.
No, well, yes, but also there's no CBOs, and they haven't actually announced one. And that There's a real elephant in the room, because if they don't, after next September, i.e. 2023,
Yeah, they've got a year to
September,
do that.
Yeah, if they haven't sorted, yeah, Rich, Andrew, we'll come back to that, Andrew. I see that, but if they haven't sorted out that, and they said they were going to sort that out already, come next September, not only will you have to have remote ID, but there'll be nowhere where you can fly them. There'll be nowhere you can fly.
Yeah, but I honestly think the FAA are going to have to reschedule these implementation phases. They're going to have to push out this September 11th, September 16th deadline, because they haven't even released the specs on the gear. No one can make a compliant system until I've released the specifications. So I don't see them doing that. And even if they do it in the next few weeks, they can't realistically expect anybody to have those systems, build the systems, get them in ready, ship them within 6 weeks. It's not going to happen. So they're going to have to push. It's not unprecedented for the FAA to push stuff out when they mess up. They've done it many times before. They'll do it again.
You're right, yes. But hopefully this has woken, but I'm sure, I'm afraid.
I know, nobody's saying anything. I'm the lone voice out there rattling the cage. Everyone's, oh, yeah.
I don't think it has lit the community up and made them wake up to what might be coming down the line. Now, Andrew mentioned last week Richard's creating a skyway for drones, and you're right. And UTM is a problem, and it's going to be which companies end up winning that sort of bid in various countries. And the worst outcome for everybody is if one airport uses company A, another airport or region uses company B, and another part of your country uses company C. So you've got to support 3 different systems and be registered with them or something. And unfortunately, I can begin to see that starting to happen. People are winning bids in the UK. So Richard has that bid, and then ANRA have won a bid in Scotland. So immediately you could say there's 2 UTMs, two different bids.
Well, what I think's really good about Altitude Angel is it won't be hard for them to go into the Scotland area, to be honest, and they won't care about the other UTM if you're using the Altitude Angel one. You know what I mean? You would just go with Altitude Angel because it seems like it's the least hassle. And it doesn't
mean it's going to win, unfortunately, does it?
No, it does. It does
if
not.
it's the most reasonable thing, it doesn't mean it's necessarily going to win in this world.
But you could imagine there's no reason not to have 2 UTMs in the same area.
He was showing his. Yeah, we know about Ken's.
This is going to be a really interesting thing, isn't it? He's got this patent. Got the patent on this thing. So is he going to use it for good or bad? Is he going to say, I'm in bed with remote ID, I'm going to facilitate the US government in clamping down on your freedoms and all sorts of stuff? Or because he's been pro-hobby, pitching himself as a pro-hobby guy, I'm here to support the hobby. If he's doing a remote ID board, then he's not, because he could turn around and say, right, government, you can't do it. I've got the patent. That's it. The court case failed, but he could still come in and say, I challenge the government's right to do this because I have the patent. He's not going to do it. He's not pro-hobby. And Vic Moss is also pro-hobby. I don't believe these guys are pro-hobby at all. They're just a thin veneer over commercial interests. They've both got commercial interests, and they're putting those commercial interests ahead of their supposed representation of the hobby. And it's
cut of
it's the way it's done is the FAA are saying, we've got hobby representatives on board, but they're not. The commercial entities wrapped in a hobby wrapper.
They're going to want a cut of everyone made. He's going to want to license it and give me £1 off everyone, please, or 5.
So they should immediately be taken off the hobby representation because there were slots set aside for the hobby. Get them out of there. They're not hobbyists. They are commercial operators and masquerading as hobbyists. And it means with hobby doesn't have any representation.
UFM. So John, we can change the name to UFM from now on. I quite like that idea. John needs his agreement. Yeah, you do need medical help. That is true. If you get into that situation, that's the things done in the name of community have been quite awful over the last 10 years. And I think the AMA are going to realise that they played with the wrong, or they were on the wrong team very, very quickly.
The AMA coming out of the suite because they're getting extra money. They're going to have a freer. If you want to fly without remote ID, you have to join the AMA and fly on one of their freers. They're going to make money out of this.
That'll
happen.
You reckon that's going to happen?
The AMA won't make a lot of money. The clubs might make a bit more money than the AMA.
No, there'll have to be an AMA club. You won't have
The AMA
any
is a
other club.
business. The AMA is a business. It is there to make money. They didn't get that big thing in bloody Indiana for no purpose, and they've got full-time staff. It's a business, and they put money ahead of everything else, because if they were protecting the hobby, they wouldn't have sat back on their bum and sent Rich into those things where he had a little snooze while everyone was talking.
And Richard, what am I talking about? I'm talking about I want to say about RID. The DJI, of course, are already running the Japanese version of RID via, is that Bluetooth or Wi-Fi? It's one or the other, but it was a firmware update. And they could yet pull the cat out of the bag for DJI by having the only one really ready to go on September the 6th, because they were very much guiding this in early days. And then it was
wouldn't they also have to comply with that patent?
Well,
because the patent
it depends.
is
I haven't read the patent. Japan is Bluetooth. Okay, thanks, Mitchell. And we don't know if America's Bluetooth or Wi-Fi yet.
Yeah, but what the patent was very simply the transmission of data. The patent was quite loose when I read it. So it doesn't matter if you instigate firmware. It doesn't matter what you do. It's basically a patent on remote ID.
Well, and Kenji sat at the meetings. That was the insidious thing about it. He was at the meetings and he went out of one of them and quickly wrote a patent, didn't he?
Yeah, it's insider trading. There's no other word to use for it. It's like the guy who works on the stock market who it's like a guy who works at a bank who knows tomorrow they're going to be dumping a crap ton of bad news and going short sells. It's insider trading. He was on the group talking about and discussing it, and then went on in the background to patent it, fully well knowing he will benefit. It's bullshit. It shouldn't be allowed, and it should be dismissed out of court, or he should give it away. End of. If he is in for the hobby, give the patent to the AMA, to someone.
Not to the AMA.
No,
not to the AMA.
Yeah.
What they should have done, all that money that was donated to RDQ for that court case would have been better setting up a fund to prosecute under that patent if Kenji donated it into the hobby as a whole. Set up a separate not-for-profit group to hold the patent, and then people would fund it to take court action against the US government to stop them using that patented technology, because this patent's only a right to sue. You still have to take it to the courts. That would be better spending our money in the patent courts than in the appeal courts, because the appeal courts, as soon as I heard the word constitution, I knew it was lost. It would never succeed.
So question then, will this patent still affect us in the UK? So that patent, although it's in America, does it mean that it applies to the UK stuff as well? Because
depends whether it's registered in the UK, probably just in the US, I'd say.
Oh, so I need to go and quickly go online and patent that idea now for the UK, do I?
Be interesting, because he would claim prior art if he wanted to come in and patent it. He could. Yeah, it becomes a difficult situation. I'm not a patent lawyer, but anyway, I think the patent thing would fail as well, because the US government, I think, has enshrined its ability to violate patent rules. I think it can seize patents for the greater good of the nation. Like I think NASA's done so on occasions, and things that, they, being the people who make the rules, they can break the rules with impunity. It's terrible.
It's the whole thing is it's a shocker, and there's more to come. As you said correctly, that the registration was the thin end of the wedge, and that there's more to come. The little things the FAA does, like always adding numbers. When people register there, they add the number. They never take off the people that have fallen out the hobby, died, or whatever. They only ever add to the total number. So of course it looks like numbers going up and up and up and up and up. But they're not.
Yeah, another interesting thing I noticed in comments on the video I put up on IC Model Review, someone said, the reviewers and that won't have to matter, because the FAA has said if you're just putting up minutized videos, you don't have to have a Part 107. So I did some research, and there are videos all over YouTube where the FAA has come to YouTube and said, you need a Part 107. So even if they've said you don't, they are actually policing this, and they're going out there and forcing people to get 107s or risk huge fines. So the reviewers, what are you going to do? You can't build your own drone after the 16th of September as a build video, or even just to review a part of that drone. You can't build it without putting standard remote ID in there. So it's the review situation is going to change dramatically in the US. Even the people who just have stuff off the shelf, there'll be nothing off the shelf. And if you build it, if it's a kit, then you still have to standardize remote ID.
And I think we've got to remember to actually need to remove, or we shouldn't be using the word drone. We should say model aircraft, because it's just the same.
And this is what I said right back at the beginning, that the regulators have to draw a distinction between the traditional hobby and Phantoms and Mavics and things, which are the root cause of all the perceived problems of the store-bought drones. So why are we being pilloried, the community which has been proven safe and responsible over many decades? Why are we being treated the same as the people who create the problems? It's nothing to do with safety. There's a convenience here driven by commercial imperatives.
But it's not even the fact that those drones are causing problems, Bruce. When was actually the last time we heard of a problem on a consumer COTS drone? They're saying they've used them as, the White House lawn incident. All of these things have been used as they've weaponized these isolated cases. The reality is the amount of actual incidents on a daily basis with a drone is minimal.
That's why they won't do the risk assessment, because it would betray the thing. Now, Brandon says something interesting. The radio master could broadcast information removing hardware from the drone, but the regulation or the rule says that the drone must broadcast it. You can't broadcast it from the ground station. The drone must broadcast it.
Yeah. The drone is rebroadcasting the details of the ground station, in actual fact, isn't it? So it's, so it can be received that a little bit further away. All right, it's a cluster. The whole thing is a cluster, and it is going to damage youngsters coming into the hobby and parents. This is another thing, isn't it? In the UK, what's in the UK now? You're going to be 14 or something, haven't you? And got to have a parent or somebody to have signed off.
Horse crock here.
Yeah, the operator ID has to be someone over a certain age, don't they?
Over a certain age. So you're going down that line, and now it needs remote ID, and of course that remote ID probably means you've got to put your name and address in somewhere to say that that's actually you, because otherwise it's useless, isn't it? So it's tied to everything else. It's another reason your parents not going to bother.
It's kind of crazy, because most kids that come into it go to model flying clubs, so BMFA. We used to have, I think the youngest we taught to fly was about 5 years old. You want that, because you need those kids, because a model flying club, and this sounds absolutely terrible now, what I'm about to say, but a model flying club will only survive as long as its youngest member. And a lot of people take the mickey out of flying clubs. They go, oh, it's full of 60-year-olds and 70-year-olds. Well, that's because they've retired and they've got the time to go down and do it. But you'll find that so many people stop flying as soon as they have kids. A lot of people stop flying because they don't have time. You've got your family. You want to see kids grow up. And typically it means for maybe 20 years, they'll never fly, but they come back to the hobby. So they'll do it as a kid for a little bit, and then they have a big gap, and then they come back to it, is how it tends to seem to work. And it will just help kill off that hobby a little bit more, which is really sad, to be honest.
Well, more than the hobby, I'll put some grandiose on it, and I've said this a million times before, it'll stop a load of youngsters having a little bit of hands-on breaking, doing education that takes them on to a university career of becoming an engineer, and then becoming the aerospace engineer that develops the latest whiz-bang G-whiz thing in 50 years' time. We'll stop that whole flipping chain.
And here we have the FAA saying, we're proudly supporting the hobby. We want the hobby to prosper. They say one thing, they do the opposite. It's like the 107 for YouTubers. They say one thing, they do the opposite. You can't trust these people, Congress has forced the FAA to do this, but the FAA could have handled this much, much better and produced a system that was far more equitable for the people who are not the problem, but they chose not to because there's so much commercial pressure. I'd like to know how many boozy lunches there have been between FAA officials and commercial interests.
Well, no, absolutely going to be a hard time in prison for not flying with RID. Yeah, I mean,
that's it. Civil disobedience. That's the only way to overcome this remote ID rule. Everybody says, stick it up your backside. We're not going to do it. Mass non-compliance. What are they going to do? There's just not enough feet on the ground to deal with this.
There's going to be mass non-compliance anyway, isn't there? There's bound to be. Look at the people flying. There's all the warnings about flying around Birmingham these 2 weeks and this, that, and everywhere. You couldn't go anywhere, and they've caught plenty of people in there flying their stuff. But of course they can, because it's such an enormous area that you know.
Birmingham's crazy because there were a few. It did seem like for a little while there's a problem commercial operators getting permission, but model flying clubs that aren't near any events have been told not to fly. You know, and they've been trying to get permission, and they're just told, "Oh, fly after the 9th, fly after the 9th." Commercial operators, fly after the 9th. I've heard some have got permissions now, and there seem to be. It seems to be happening, and there seems to be some sort of flow going on now. But I think initially there was very much. No, we're going to stop everyone. But now it looks like there's a little bit of common sense that's appeared. There is a process you can go through to get approvals, and people are getting it, which is good.
Well, that's good. And we have to remember that we are probably the largest airspace user group now, and we should have a louder voice. You know, let's get those manned aircraft ADS speed up and all those other good things.
I found it ridiculous that a model flying club wasn't allowed to fly. You know where they are. The police know where they are. Do you know what I mean? You could say this site,
and also it's miles from the events. It's like it is miles. It's not like here's a model flying club and over the fence there's.
So you couldn't even fly a DLG, right? You couldn't even toss a balsa wood glider up into the air without any form of motor. And the thing is, again, this boils down to the fact: why is the hobby not distinct from the problem? It's
getting angry.
Huh? Yeah, I know, but not getting angry. Yeah, perhaps it's because there's just not enough people anymore. I mean, the hobby's dying. We know that. And this is going to be another death blow. And those that are, I think most people have worked out, we just keep quiet and fly under the radar. It's the only option we have. We make a noise, we become visible. We pop our heads over the ramparts. But you silly people, you've all registered. They know who you are.
Yeah, I mean,
True.
Don't get me wrong. I don't think it was the police being awkward. I don't think it was anything to do with our police forces or anything. On the size of the area that was set and the blanket no fly, that was a government decision. You know what I mean? That was a DFT.
It was it was kind of an easy one to make, wasn't it? We'll do all the controlled airspace. You know, it wasn't any thinking. We'll just we'll do that.
Yeah. They just went, and then the poor police are the ones we give a little bit of grief to because they're the ones that control the airspace. What do you mean you're not letting us fly? You know, and
GA was allowed across the top at 3,500 feet. I thought that was pretty terrible, actually, because what's more likely to cause the damage if, you know...
Manned aviation's got such a great track record of nothing falling out the sky, hasn't it?
And
we've never seen bad actors drop things out of airplanes onto populated areas, have we?
Never happened. Never, ever happened. It's been a funny old week. Lots and lots of drone delivery stuff yet again. I do seem biased with it, but it is genuine stuff that pops up. Of the normal stuff, it's since this RID announcement, a lot of companies have shut up. You can see they've just gone very quiet because they must be wondering what on earth they're going to do in the next 6 weeks with no guidelines to follow, as it were. You know,
I wonder if the US will start stopping drones at the border because a lot of stuff's imported from China. Will they put out a thing if it's a drone and it doesn't have remote ID, we're seizing it, it's non-compliant after the deadline this year? I don't know. That could happen. They've done it before with trademark goods because trademark companies, you know, they like to enforce trademarks, so they seize counterfeit goods. They may start seizing drones in the same way, and model aircraft that are coming into the country because a model aircraft's a fixed-wing foamy is not an inconspicuous package.
So that's what SF drones was saying. Fly model. Yeah, I think that's a pretty. Yes, that is the thing, isn't it? That is a pretty valid comment.
No, they don't.
Well, but then whose fault? Whose fault should we? So if it was more accepting or easier to get into the AMA fold or something, perhaps, and here's throwing some stuff out there. If it was a bit less fuddy-duddy at the school and there was some more training offered, perhaps, or are those people just not interested in it at all? They just want to take their happy snaps and then put it in the cupboard, never to see it again. They
just want a camera with propellers on it. That's all they want. They're not hobbyists. They're not model flying. It's not the flying. It's the video and the photo stuff
It's
that
the
they're
video and the
interested in.
photos, isn't
But I
it?
mean, I think New Zealand's got it pretty good, because the way this should work is that if you're a hobbyist, then most hobby organisations have some kind of certification exams like Wings or whatever's. I know Australia does, New Zealand does. I assume that BMFA has some kind of accreditation. Yeah. If someone is going to put in the effort enough to earn that accreditation, they should be given a separate set of rules and principles and operational things, because they've proven they're not just out there to make a nuisance with a camera drone. So again, the hobby should have been separated out, and the hobby organisations should have pushed much harder for that, but they didn't. They just laid back and said, as long as you give us a little something, we'll be happy. They shouldn't have just accepted what was given to them. They should have said, this is what we demand, and without it, you won't get our compliance, and our members won't comply either. You've got to play hard-nosed with these people.
Well, BMFA
Andrew, RID's not happening in the but RID's not happening in the UK yet. Yet.
Yeah. So BMFA, if you go out and you do your BMFA stuff, and even if you join FPV UK, they do have a little bit more with a special exemption from the CAA called Article 16, which does actually allow hobby flyers to fly in recreational areas. So recreational areas become open to you if you're a BMFA member or FPV UK, because you do a bit more training, or you've done some of the certificates and stuff, and you've passed a bit more of a test, and you're accepted to be, should we say, a bit more competent at flying. You can fly at reduced distances, which is really interesting. So it's 15 meters for takeoff and landing. So you can literally take a model plane off 15 meters from people not involved in the flight. And then you can overfly as long as you're 30 meters or higher. You can overfly them, although I don't recommend it typically, even with a model plane. But there are things there that you can do under Article 16. And that is thanks to the BMFA saying, hang on a minute, you've changed all the rules. This is what we used to have. Come on, you've taken half the stuff away. We need something back here, kind of thing. And they did get something. I mean, our CAA is not unreasonable. The UK CAA does seem to have a lot of common sense in there at times. It's one of the more sensible ones I have found at times. Don't get me wrong, they're not perfect. Don't get me wrong. But what I'm saying is they are more reasonable. They're ones that will fight sometimes when it's right. They used to fight our corner as well.
It's interesting because the AMA did nothing like that. They were offered a few crumbs and said, oh, we're happy. But I noticed how like Canada's probably a good example. In Canada, you've got to have all these flight logs and everything for your drone flights. Nobody's doing it. Nobody's enforcing it. It's like it's such a crap rule that I think the regulator themselves openly accept that nobody's going to do it, right? You can't fly through snow on your propeller, and you've got to keep if you make a change any part, you've got to keep a log of it, and all that's the manufacturer's details and things. It just doesn't happen. And this is recreational. It just does not happen.
Yeah, so recreational, that's just bonkers. But, commercially here in the UK, you would do that. If you go around doing maintenance on your aircraft, you should be logging that maintenance. But if
then you start doing that just for the sake of your business, don't you? Because you've got to keep a control of the costs.
Yeah,
it makes sense to do that. If it's your
but again, this is separating the hobby from commercial operations and drone as such. In Canada, if you've got a fixed wing, I guess you've got to make a note if you change a wheel or something, and keep it in your log and present it if requested to do so. I mean, this is just lunacy.
Dan's right, not enough inspectors enforce advanced pilots, let alone recreational pilots, and that's in the manned world. But unfortunately, this RID sort of stuff and that element of it is going to be enforced by your local coppers. It's not going to, the FAA aren't going to enforce this at all. And that's a little bit dangerous. I mean, in the UK police have got extended search. We need the other Richard here, Richard Ryan, the extended search powers now. If they suspect you've got a drone in your boot and you're going to use it for something dodgy, they can look in your car. So that's, of course, that's being I think, Mister, you've probably got a drone in the back of your boot of your car, so we'll have a look. That's being used already, I know, for nothing to do with drone stuff. It's just.
And if you look at America, have you noticed in America they've got this seizure thing? Police can seize cash. If you're caught with cash, they can seize cash of any amount, and you have to prove that you got it from legal means. If you go on YouTube, there's so many cases where people have been traveling, down the road. They might have bought a car on eBay, and they're going to pick up the car, and the buyer said they want cash. They've been pulled over by the cops, and they've found you got $5,000 cash. Well, we think that's drug money. We're taking that. You've got to go to court to get it back. So there's so many unscrupulous practices go on with the police as it is, because in America the police is quite different. It's business, it's a business. There's a profits to be made, and it's the local sheriff is appointed by the mayor, and it's all kind of strange, kind of different to the rest of the world. So you can see so much avenue for a particular police force to say, oh, we can see a lot of money here, let's get out and ping all these drone owners.
It makes sense to want to have 7 pilots flying, but it doesn't SF drone, because your air traffic authority is not going to see the data. That's the whole folly of it.
That's why it's complete cock up, or it's a complete cluster. I won't get you extreme bans. I won't get it, demonetized. But it's complete cluster circle. It's a complete cluster circle, because that RID is only going 500 meters if you're lucky. It won't go very far. It's not a strong signal. So it goes 500 meters. Nothing's there to retransmit it or say, I'm here to an aircraft. There's nothing in an aircraft to say, oh, there's a drone down there. There's nothing for that plane without any kind of beacon in it to say, oh, so the drone pilot can see it. It's a complete waste of absolute time, and it's pointless.
All of it, and SF drone. Sorry, he knew that. He's in the comments, but it's having there's loads of things when you think about it that modern aviation needs to start sorting itself out. Let's drag ourselves into the aviation school, as it were, or world. Why are we still? Go on, mate.
Here's one thing. Imagine if the FAA had spent all the time they spent on this remote ID rule policing Boeing and their MAX 8.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
What you mean? Actually, put someone in jail as well?
Well, actually save some lives. Address real threats and real problems to human safety.
It should never have taken off, should it? It should never have got to the point of going.
How did that
I also wonder how many lives would have been saved. All this gender neutrality, they've spent millions of dollars in the FAA making everything gender neutral. Like there's no longer a notice to airmen, and it's no longer an unmanned aerial vehicle. If they'd spent some of that money on actually dealing with safety issues, how many lives would they have saved, I wonder?
Think of this. If they had actually used a dictionary to look up those words, think how much money they would have saved themselves as well. Because while everyone goes unmanned, they think it means, because it's got the word M-A-N in it, M-A-N, man, everyone thinks it means a man. It doesn't at all. It just means uncrewed, which crew is undefined. It doesn't say if it's male or female. It doesn't matter.
Human.
Yeah, you're human. Exactly. You're a human. And so people get worked up about the word man appearing in words. And they've got to get over themselves. And
have you noticed all of the recent FAA live streams have been chaired by a African American woman? She's probably also lesbian. I don't know. But I mean, they're catering to this woke thing. We've got to be seen to be doing the right thing after years of oppressing, the minorities and the women. We've got to be seen to be pushing the right up front. It is so blatantly apparent. It makes me cringe every time I see it.
We're very, very, very missing that target on this then. we're jiggered now. We're very jiggered. I'm going to try and reverse us out of this cul-de-sac before it gets too late. I'm a big fan now of my coming on. But what I was going to say is, I was thinking about it today. The many things. RID is just a technology that doesn't solve anything for anyone, in my opinion. But now, why are GA aircraft still using AM radios? Have you got any good reason why they're still using AM radios, Bruce?
Because they're cheap and they don't want to burden the manned aviation community with costs. They'll happily make us fit remote ID and standard remote ID and that sort of stuff. That's okay, but they don't want to burden real pilots with a cost burden. And also there's the legacy. How are you going to have the transition period? And it's like,
Yeah, it is all those reasons, isn't it? But if we were to clean sheet piece of paper the sky now, we wouldn't use AM radios of that type. Yes, we would use them in the Second World War, but we'd use a system which, as I said a couple of weeks ago, might have, even gives the controllers readbacks in or commands in text coming across like RDS. So when your car radio says it's ABBA playing or whatever, why on earth are we still? Because then you could check what it was, exactly what was said, all sorts of many other things.
Yeah, but let's face it, aviation uses technology that's decades old. I mean, we've got Cessnas flying with engines that were designed in the 1940s, and it's like that's the way.
So are the radios.
We have to be so conservative because new things might not work properly.
But we've got to remember that now, Bruce, that's the important bit, because unless it's actually got a little stamp on it to say you can use it in the air and it's certified to be in the air, you can't use it anyway. It's ridiculous. It's so crazy. I was at a small airfield doing some stuff. When was this? 8 months ago. And there was a guy there apparently, and I could hear the other pilots moaning about it, but the guy had 2 tablets in his cockpit running like different flight software, like flight radar and another one to track aircraft. And they were like moaning because, it's not certified. It's not signed off. He's using stuff that he shouldn't, to help him navigate, to help him avoid certain things. And I was thinking, do you know what? If it works, does it matter? He's actually making sure he is safe. But they were moaning because it wasn't, it didn't have that that little rubber seal to say, or little stamp to say, it can be used in an aircraft.
Well, it's like batteries. If you want to get a certified battery for an aircraft, it's like 3 times the price of the very same battery made by the very same manufacturer that you put in your motorbike or your car. And the silly thing is that a lot of aviation batteries, they're so small and useless that they're pretty much, if you don't get it started within the first 3 or 4 tries, the battery's flat anyway. So instead of just certifying something, why not specify a better battery?
Well, what about the 757's batteries? They were good, weren't they? It was a 757, wasn't it?
The 777.
Their batteries were really good.
The Firestarter
777 at the top, Firestarters at the top. But it's there's a load of nonsense, and really the thing with the drone world is this is the new stuff. This is what's coming. It's digital, native digital. We can do all sorts of clever things. We can fit all sorts of clever radios, all sorts of secure links to talk to people, and that's what we should be doing. We shouldn't be held back, being dragged back by 50-year-old technology and places that run 50-year-old technology. Should be having to keep up now.
Is it not just a 50-year-old mindset, though, Gary, of manned aviation world as well? Is it not just
50,
the technology, but it's the mindset of these people as well? It's their mindset that's also holding us back, because they're the ones going, you can't make these changes. Is it not just it's a combination of both? Is it not?
Probably. Yeah, big ships are slow to turn. Oh, that's right, big ships. That's why I reminded myself what I wanted to say. Do we see that maritime organisations, and this is to your point, Mark, are actually abandoning paper charts now? They're going to stop printing paper charts. So they've taken on board digital navigation wholeheartedly.
I would have thought that'd be even worse, because I don't know any electronic equipment that's particularly friendly in salt water.
Yeah, but I suppose you've got enough of it. If every crew member's got a cell phone in their pocket, then every crew member's got a method of navigating the ship. If it really, I don't know, I'm just being frivolous and putting that out there.
But have we not also noticed, have you not seen in the newspapers, where there's a lot of ships just turning off their little transponders? So that oil tanker just going, I'm just going to turn this off for a little bit, and then all of a sudden it reappears later on.
Haven't they just been mandated to haven't the new ones? There was something last year, wasn't there, about having to keep it on? I think, I can't remember.
Well, they're meant to all the time.
And it's also to like small dinghies as well, or something like that.
Bermuda Triangle.
But we're talking about oil ships here that are blatantly going from a certain country, meeting up with another tanker. They do the transfer, and then both suddenly reappear again on the system far apart.
Well, they
the same with drug carriers.
They use satellite to track them.
In fact, I was thinking before, I think parents should now be advising their kids, don't you dare get involved in this hobby. It's far too dangerous. You could get fines, imprisonment. Just go back on the streets and peddle drugs like you did before.
Well, I was going to say something else worse than that. I better not.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I was
Maybe in your part of the UK, yes.
Well, I was going to say, people that like kids would be able to easily track a kid. That's scary. If you think about it that way, that is really scary.
No, but the regulators cover themselves there, certainly in the UK, because there should be a responsible adult with that child. So they've already covered that. That's pre.
Kids are not allowed to be kids anymore. You can't be a lone kid going out having fun on your own. That's against the law.
No, it's very tricky for them. It's very tricky. Now, look, we're definitely ranting around the topics, and we've been here more than an hour. Ian's hardly said anything. I think he's busy breaking something there. I did see some fiddling happening there earlier. Hopefully, there's no USB in it.
No, I was having a look at something. I just wanted to confirm something I'd taken apart before, but I couldn't remember. It's sort of relevant to something I can't talk about yet. But
I hope he wasn't fiddling, because YouTube will block this video for excessive violence.
Opinions are not allowed.
No, I meant music. I meant a music thing.
I'm trying to get back on top of some of the more technical stuff, because everything's been reviews and hearsay nonsense and nonsense.
Well, it'll be good soon. Come September, you and Bruce will
our business will pick up again. We'll be the only ones that can do it outside the USA.
Hey, Bruce annihilated everyone this week on a live stream, and not only that, he took everyone's money. He stole
You're not
everyone's
bitter in
income.
any way, are you?
Says the man who got $100 super chat while he's just wandering around and sitting on a park bench somewhere.
I did it right that one. But yeah, no, it was great to see Bruce live. I think he should do it once a month.
Yeah, but not at that time in the morning. It's only that the dogs woke me up that I saw it. I saw
it.
the end
It was
of
okay for me. That was all right for me.
Yeah, it would have been early evening UK time, or evening.
Yeah, it was. I was in the middle of editing something I needed finished, but it's not as easy as you think it is it, Bruce?
It's never easy. That's why you're the professional, man. I don't even have this fancy gear with the makes my voice change and allows me to switch cameras. I just got a webcam. It's terrible.
Yeah, but just look at Dave, though, isn't it? When you look at the EV blog, that's Dave sits here on a Saturday morning. I want to actually see his, because he had Signal Path on last week or the week before. If those who haven't seen the guy with the test equipment, which is an incredible channel. But
Save the Tower. Well done, SF Drone. I've forgotten to mention that. And Fiona, I don't know what a Carrington event is. I know a pub called the Carrington.
Coronal Message. Carrington, Coronal Mass Ejection, wasn't it?
Yeah, okay.
Well,
yeah, true. Yeah, true that. The reliance on GPS. Save the Tower. Where are we with Save the Tower? When's the next?
Well, that's interesting. The mayor apparently is quite upset with my last video on her, pointing out that she perhaps was a little disingenuous. And so the councillors put a comment on that video. They put a comment on there saying, this is unfair, it's unreasonable, you've misquoted the mayor, and this wasn't a sister city relationship, it was a sister city friendly relationship. So I simply pointed them to their own document that said sister city, unequivocal, stop trying to dig a hole.
So if they commented in your video, I mean, it'd be terrible if people went to that video and then commented on their comment.
It would be awful.
That's my homework. Solar Storm. I know. Carrington said, but the Carrington Arms is a very nice pub near Cranfield. It's very, very nice.
But that's the thing. Actually, this whole that coronal mass ejection thing. It's being totally. It's a reasonably common event, far more common than anyone getting hurt with a recreational multi-rotor drone. Yet we're building UTMs, which will have all these drones operating solely under the navigation of GPS. And if they're all in the air at once, and a CME hits us, and the GPS systems are. They don't go down, but the noise level, the signal to noise ratio drops so that the GPS no longer can give a reliable lock. What's the fallback situation? Where do they go? Where do they land? What can they do? They can't. This is a huge disaster in the making. The skies will, if the judge is right, the skies will rain drones, and these are not little Mavics and recreational drones. These are 50-pound commercial drones carrying stacks of man-killing pizzas. I mean, this is what's going to happen.
Well, there we are. Pizzas from the sky. A dream for some, a dream for many. Here it comes. You heard it here first.
Well, with all the energy crisis that's going on around the world, people are going to be very grateful for those pizzas, because everything's going up in price. Free pizzas out the sky.
Down today.
It'll be cold.
Drop in price.
Fuel of petrol has and diesel has come down here at last. Although gas prices, not so much. I don't think. Hinkley Point B got turned off yesterday. 3% of UK's power that it used to generate, Hinkley Point, they just flicked the switch. It's done.
Why? It's nuclear.
Yeah, but it had a lifespan, and it already went 5 years over its lifespan. They put procedures in place, took it another 5 years. Because we messed about and the UK fooled about trying to get Hinkley C started, we will be 7 to 12 years before Hinkley C even comes online. So
I don't think we have to worry. Fusion's only 10 years away.
It's always only 10 years away.
It's always only 10 years away.
I can speak to Hinkley as
like
if I was clever with a camera. If I was clever with a camera, I would take photographs of the Hinkley Point nuclear power station from every point of Somerset, where what I am from, where it flipping ruins the skyline. And the decommissioning plan for that place is to build a hill on top of it with a sign on the top that says "Do not open for 100,000 years." And it's terrible. You can probably
So
see,
it's just
well,
like
you can see it from
Chernobyl then.
Cardiff, I'm sure. Yeah, yeah. So.
Well, the only good thing about any coastline that's got a nuclear power station on it, and this sounds terrible, the only good thing is they have to protect the coastline. They actually have to protect that coast because they can't afford for the sea to breach its defences at all. So those nuclear power stations were a blessing.
Hello, Japan. We're calling. Hello.
Yeah,
but Japan. We'd like to talk to you about your coastline.
Yeah, but that was a tsunami that was like one in 1,000 years. Don't get me wrong; it could happen there again. They are in an earthquake.
It's going to be there. It's going to be under a hill for 100,000 years. So it's.
Well, we're not in an earthquake zone. Let's be clear. UK is not in an earthquake zone. We don't get big earthquakes. Chance of a tsunami is really low for us. But rising sea levels are our biggest threat. So rising sea levels is eroding the UK coast meters every day, and they will protect that coastline because they will have to.
Yeah, that's a positive way of looking at it, I suppose. We're definitely talking nonsense. Before we go, has anyone else seen any more news this week?
You mentioned Wing earlier, and you didn't go back to the story. You mentioned it, but we didn't get anything else.
Oh, no, just that they've been in the
Sean said something, didn't you? Say something about Sean's statement on Wing.
Sean, last week we were speaking about it because he was very kindly, he mentioned he put his opinion last week when we were chatting about Wing, and it pretty much lines up with mine. So I must talk to him about that. I found it's quite interesting to see how he's generated his opinion as well. But that, in my opinion, is that they should not be in the UK receiving any Innovate UK funding for any of the things, and they shouldn't be in the meetings. They shouldn't be there. So that's partly how RIDS got to America. People like
today's discussion has given me an idea for a video. I think it's time we fought back. Now, the commercial drone people are saying these recreational drones are dangerous, must be out of the sky. I'm going to do a video showing exactly what happens when our skies are filled with drones and pilotless air taxis, and we get a CME. Do we want to risk that? Do we really want to risk that? Because CMEs, it's only a matter of time. It's not if, it's when we get another Carrington event. All those things fall from the sky. Do you want to be in an air taxi when that happens? Because there's no pilot to take control. And do you want to be under a drone when that happens? Because nothing's going to rescue you.
Well, it takes out power lines and things like that as well, doesn't it? A really good one.
Yeah, but navigation completely disappears.
Yeah, so there's all sorts of elements of that digital picture that would be disrupted, not just the GPS, but the ground-based communications. The lovely 5G and 6G, 7G, 8G, 9G might be disrupted by it.
And when you take the man out of the loop, you have no fallback.
Oh, that he's back in time. We summoned him back. They just mentioned his name, and we summoned him back. Yeah, no, I was just saying I agree with what you said last week. Right, going once, going twice. Has anyone seen? We've mentioned the tower. That's good. We mentioned DJI. We've mentioned RID, and loads of other nonsense. Sorry, say again.
We mentioned Avatar, flavor of the month.
Is there much Skydio? I've noticed this Skydio been a little bit active, but nothing phenomenal.
They're having, funny enough, Fiona's wood of the neck because everything's close in Australia. It's a bit like New Zealand. You can walk across when the tide's out. They're having some events across Australia. I see that's happening, and they've put out a few little training things, but I think they're just carrying on, aren't they? Must be time for them to produce a new machine. And how long since the X2? A couple of years?
It's a while. But does the X2 even exist?
I think it does, doesn't it? That's the one that's out on the street, isn't it? I think that's the one that's out there.
Well, the S2 is the main one that consumers.
Oh, is it the S2? My apologies.
The X2. The X2. Has anyone even seen one? Does it really exist?
And well, nobody. They don't send anything out for review, do they?
No.
You need training to fly the Skydio or SF drone school. Do you need training to fly Skydio? Do you? Oh, because it uses its modes.
Just
What
in
do
the
you
same
mean
way
by
you
that?
don't need a driver's license to drive a Tesla.
Yeah.
Apparently so, isn't it? Yeah, I've never laid hands on
No.
a Skydio. Has anyone here laid hands on a Skydio?
No, I've not.
No.
Which I think is a bit unfair because we had the Skydio guys in here and we raved over the technology. Remember, we had way back in the beginning. I thought they'd have sent us all one as a token of appreciation.
Back before nobody knew their name, and that's the trouble with being first to find these people. They forget you on the way up. You see them on the way down. Yeah. No, they were very good.
I'm still waiting for my wind kite, my energy generating wind kite.
Well,
remember the Scottish guys? They had the kite with the big real drums and it was going to fly out and generate electricity. What happened to them?
Oh, have you not seen the documentary? There's a fantastic documentary about that on the Tube of the U. Mancani, became a Google whatever project, didn't it? Whatever they call their fancy flights of fancy ones. There's a very good. I'll send you the link afterwards. There's a very good documentary. If I'll try and put it in here now. I've watched that.
Have you still had no response from our mayor for an interview?
No, nothing at all.
Shame.
From your mayor, and who else was it you asked? I had to get a response from. There's loads of people that.
I think D Drone. We're still waiting for D Drone to front up, aren't we? I see they've been in the press releases again recently.
Yes. Yeah, plenty of people. I've asked. What about that drone that was going to take a 50 cal bullet to protect you? Whatever happened to them? Oh, the little whizzy shaped FPV thing. Is that the one you mean, iForce? They're still about. There's loads of those still about.
But they can't defeat the slaughter bots.
The slaughter bots. God, we are talking nonsense now. All right, I can't find that wind turbine thing straight away. So on that bombshell news, I'm going to say going once, going twice. Dear viewer, wherever you are in the world, I didn't give you a chance to jump in. Wherever you are in the world, look after yourselves. Love to see those of you in Australia and New Zealand. Have a lovely rest of the day. Enjoy your lunch now. And people in America, enjoy your supper. And I'm going to bed. So cheers all. Look after yourselves. I should have pressed this button first. We'll see you again next week. Same